beyond like the first 20-minute like festival sequence or whatever it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it. So this is an older game. I'm going to talk about the games and the game and the gameplay. It shouldn't be too long, and then I kind of have a little bit of a more of a literary kind of interpretation of it, but it's not academic. It shouldn't be dry.
Are you
And
spoilering
hopefully,
things?
what's that?
Are you giving out spoilers?
No, not well. Maybe one, but
Okay.
we should be we should you should be able to play the game and still have fun.
The only thing I know about this game is that there's a frog in it that wields a sword.
Yeah, which is I right. Okay, well that's that's the whole presentation. This game is awesome because there's that frog and he's got a massive moon. I mean, what more do you need in a game than that? So, like we mentioned, it came out on that for sure the DS with some extra content, and I think the GameCube game. No, the Wii. I don't know what the Nintendo systems are anymore. I've lost the time, but whatever digital arcade they have on the system, I think it came out for that. The first time when it was originally released, it was for the Super Nintendo, and the graphics on the DS are virtually identical. It came out in 1995, which is like Windows was coming out, Braveheart was coming out. Like this is the deep and distant past.
20th anniversary, people.
Yeah, um, it's 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 made definitely it's very innovative, but it's made in the style of those old school RPGs like the Final Fantasies. It's very close to that because it's made by Square. It's a little bit similar to maybe Shining Force a bit, Fantasy Star, those kind of things.
So it is
So this
primarily, an RPG, kind of like a basic RPG kind of game. You have your party of a couple characters, and you go around and you fight things in random encounters and boss encounters and stuff like that.
yeah,
It's not like a strategy tactics game, where you're using, square grids and hex grids and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. All the strategy involved is sort of using certain abilities in concert, but mostly it's your characters are wandering through the world. You assemble a party, you find items to give to them, and you level them up to make them more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantasy based. You start off in a fantasy setting, so in the past, but it's actually a time traveling game. So you go all the way back to prehistoric times and all the way forward to kind of a science fiction setting, and then past that to the end of the world. So, I'm,
Dinosaurs.
yeah, there's dinosaurs and airships
Wait.
again.
Is there a restaurant at the end of the universe?
No, it's kind of the somber version. It's actually one of the neatest parts of the game. It's this old man named Gaspar, and he's under a single kind of 18th century London style streetlight, and there's a cobblestoned walkway, and it's all twilit and very, very, very somber and appropriate to the gravity of being the end of time. Um,
Cool.
so you're traveling. I guess the basic mechanic is, other than the fighting, is there are these portals. So there's no you don't have well, I guess you do have a TARDIS, but you find these portals early in the game, and that lets you travel back and forth between different eras. And then if you do something in the past, it will affect the future some of the time. So that's there's a lot of the puzzles obviously involve that. And then your TARDIS that you get eventually is a flying ship, and you don't need the portals. You can just hop around and be where you need to be.
We love our
Uh,
TARDIS.
And then the thing to talk about the most is, I guess, the characters. There's 7 of them. Um, you've got your stoic leader who has the option to wield among as many swords as katana. So hard to
Of course.
hard to find fault with someone that cool. One of the things the game does, interestingly enough, with him is there's no. This is before voice acting, really, so it's all just written text. But he never really speaks. It's all people speaking to him. So he's sort of the gateway character
the
into the game.
the silent protagonist trope.
Exactly. There's a precocious princess who is needs to get out there and live her own life. There's an inventor girl who's pretty cool. There's the cave woman chief of the Ioka tribe, which is back in the distant past, the prehistoric times. There's a robot from the future who has a heart of gold, which is awesome.
A literal heart of gold.
And then there's a sorcerer. If you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, he's like Piccolo. He's mean, but man, he gets results. And at the end of the day, he sees what's right. And then last but not least is the character called Frog, who is a man-sized anthropomorphic frog who wields a giant 2-handed sword and has one of the greatest leitmotif theme songs in any video game ever, and just with a Super Nintendo sound card too. So he's amazing. The 4 kind of I wrote down 4 things that I think are like pretty notable about it. It was kind of made right at the end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle, so all the stuff they'd learned about graphics and gameplay and programming for the system, they were sort of at the full height of their powers.
This was like the culmination of years of RPG research, the full culmination of everything.
That's right. That's exactly true. And in some ways, it doesn't seem like a Super Nintendo game because it's so nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had a dream team kind of creators. One of which, as I mentioned, Piccolo was actually the creator of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. So you definitely see that in the game. It has a lot of moments. A Dragon Ball Z episode can turn 5 seconds of a fight into an episode. This can draw out, never in a boring way, but when the big moments are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it that way. The soundtrack is done by Nobuo Uematsu, which I'm very certain that's not how you pronounce his name.
He's very Square famous. He did a lot of the Final Fantasies and stuff.
He did all the Final Fantasy stuff exactly well. So he's, and so if you listen to the soundtrack today, it's pretty simple by today's standards, but at the time was just unprecedented, and really, it's the funny thing about music is it doesn't have to be too complex to be powerful, right? So it's quite an affecting game. And then the other thing that really makes it interesting for me is these 16-bit graphics. So the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, those were the first kind of games where the sprites could convey emotion. I mean, it's primitive. It's all in big gestures. But Mario on the Nintendo, he was a true stoic because he looks the same facing down a Goomba as he does Bowser, right? Or spitting a fireball, right? You just didn't have that. Whereas this game definitely, the characters can actually convey emotion.
They're not very big, but you've got the origin of the big eyes, which could really help, which were disproportionately sized, but actually helped you visualize what was going on.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. So it's an incredibly long game. It's the same. I guess it's compared to what else we've been talking about, it's about the same 50 hours as that other game, maybe a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Replayability is amazing, though, because when you beat the game, it gives you a game plus where you can re-enter into the game as now someone who can travel through time in an unrestricted way or a less restricted way and do all kinds of new stuff or different stuff, try to beat the game differently, and it has alternate endings. So to really find everything and play it to completion, if that's your bag, would be, now we're getting closer to 75 or even 100 hours.
Well, that's cool. I love New Game Plus.
Yes, that's right.
That was a great invention.
Yeah, and that was sort of, I don't think maybe it was the first time they'd had something like that in a game. The Quest for Glory series kind of let you do a little something like that, but it certainly wasn't common at that time, and quite startling at the time. So, I mean, this is I don't know who the experts about this kind of thing would be, but there's certainly a lot of people on a lot of gaming sites that consider this to be, one of the 10 best games of all time. So
they can't all be wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. So definitely worth checking out, especially now that you can get it back in a DS. The Super Nintendo copies itself are pretty pricey these days, but a DS copy is not too bad.
Nice. So, I mean, the way the game plays, it's generally, standard RPG. You adventure around your normal adventure screen, and then you occasionally hit random battles. And I'm looking at a battle screen right now, so it's like an active time-based system.
Yeah, it's active time, so you have a gauge, and then once that fills up, that character's option menu appears, and you can select, attack, magic, using items, stealing, all kinds of the full gamut of your typical actions. Mm-hmm. The encounters work a little differently, and then on the overhead map there can be random ones, but when you come into like a forest or something like that, you can actually see the enemies before the battle starts, and in many cases you can avoid them, which is nice because it can sort of take that grindy feeling away when you're you just want to get from point A to point B, but you can't certainly skip the game, because if you run past too many enemy fights, you get into a boss or something that
and then you can't just really take on because you're not the right level.
You don't have the levels for it. You don't have the levels for this, son.
I like games like that. I talked about one earlier today.
Yeah. And it's sort of like, that other game where you have the range to walk around. This has that Final Fantasy thing where about 75 or 80% through the game, you're really free to go anywhere, right? And the sandbox is really the
open to you.
The whole world.
You got your flying ship, you got your submarine, you got your time travel device. You can travel on 3 different axes.
Yeah, that's right.
4 different axes. You can travel through 4 different axes. Up, down, left, right, forward, backward, and time. Unprecedented.
Well, especially for 1995, it was it was something else. And
it's really I was going to say, this is what, Japan 1995, and 1995 US was what? Back to the Futuring? No, that was 85. Yeah.
No, what well, like I said, I guess Braveheart. What came out around Braveheart? I don't even know. Jurassic Park was out, I guess. Here's the theme that ties it together. There are dinosaurs in this too.
Welcome to Jurassic Trigger.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. This is not a significant spoiler, but when you go back in time to 60 million BC with the Cave Woman Chieftain, if you don't do one of the things, then you come back to the present, and dinosaurs defeated humans and are now the dominant species, and everyone's a dinosaur. So you have to get back to the past pretty quick at that point.
But dinosaurs.
So it can have that very solemn, almost over seriousness of Final Fantasy, which I think is great. But there's a lot of light comic moments uh,
That's cool.
to it
I
as
like
well.
how it's not, completely linear either. The way it's sounding like there's lots of different paths that kind of open up depending on which way you which actions you took.
There's multiple paths which lead to the alternate endings, and um, there's subtle little things. If you don't do certain things or little parts of a quest, or miss certain side quests, then people react differently to you for the rest of the game. And for some of them, even though it's a time travel game, because you can only go back to the main eras, once you miss the event, that's it, right? And that's changed the game, and now the game will play out this way. Um, for the rest of the game. And then right at the end, when you've sort of done all the story and it's just the big boss, there's quite a few hours of optional and very long side quests that you can do if you're not tired of the game.
That's cool. I
It's
should
one
play
of
this at some point.
it's one of the classics, that's for sure.
They should get this should get. I think this should get a 3D remake now.
Well, a lot of the independent developers, partially because of their budget, but I think as a conscious aesthetic choice, are kind of picking to do kind of like pseudo 16-bit graphics for their game now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's almost like an art style. It's almost like Picasso painting as an impressionist or whatever he did, right? Like I don't know if it would be better 3D. I almost like the 16-bit, but I could just be a lost victim of nostalgia on that one.
Mm, that's true. I did buy all of my old Final Fantasy games, 1 through 6 for my old Game Boy Advance SP.
Nice. That's pretty sweet. Now, speaking of remakes, do I support the Final Fantasy VII remake? Yes. The most important thing to ever happen. That
Oh
game
yeah,
needs to keep living.
I was amazed. I was like, it's about time. But having them actually waited and actually seeing some of the graphics for it, I am quite pleased.
Yeah, it's
Then I just remember all the awkward moments that the game actually contained. It's like that was a little bit weird.
oh, just like technical things.
Well, the fact that you realize when you finally realize that your main character is an emotionally distracted schizophrenic
Right.
of sorts.
Yes. That's still so cool.
Also, Corneo's mansion.
Well, okay. That there's some weird. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do with that.
Until then, though, Chrono Trigger is a great way to spend your time for your if you have an RPG niche you wanna scratch.
Yes, absolutely.
That's cool. I should actually get to playing that.
You should. It's a rite of passage. Chrono Trigger, the Final Fantasies. I go back to the old days of Carmen Sandiego, even, which isn't an RPG, but
Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Hey, I watched the old TV shows of that, man. That's
with
the ultimate in
with Rockefeller was the name of the band that had the.
doo-wop.
You're gonna be YouTubing that when we go off the air, and you know what? So am I.
I already have it on a playlist, actually, so.
That's pretty sweet too.
All right. I think that's going to do it for us today, then. Went over a couple great games, something very enjoyable. Maybe somebody found something that they wanted to try out at the next game night, or just download something off of the internet. Steam is a great way to get some of these games. iOS, especially for like Star Realms, where it's free, which now I should probably actually go and download that, since it is actually free. Because the only thing I remember board gaming getting on my iPad was Galaxy Trucker. That was fun. That was crazy. Galaxy Trucker is insane. I don't know if we talked about that yet, but maybe I'll talk about it next time we do a changing game. But Next week, I believe we will be back to State of the Federation. For those of you guys who actually watch that kind of thing, there's new ships coming out to review. Maybe we'll do something top whatever, and I don't know. We'll decide it over the next week. Let's see. Any other things that I am trying to do? Oh, Joseph, you remember we played a particularly neat little RPG space station game back at
Yes, that
Origins.
we should definitely do that.
Now that I have time for that, and I remembered that their Kickstarter is starting soon, I'm going to see if I can try to score an interview with their lead designer for that. Maybe we could get maybe we'll have a live interview or a uploaded interview to YouTube. I'll see if I can what I can talk him into. But aside from that, anything cool over by you, Joseph? Any other cool game night happenings or stuff?
I had my OP or one of my two OPs for the month last night. That was good. I brought a horrible two ship, both with conditional surrender build, and
You brought a try hard build.
the
You brought the
Frankie had
cheese.
taken over two Prometheuses, but now, but no Peter. He's Mayweather to my Pacquiao. I can't remember which is which. But he begged off as being sick, so I didn't.
The coward.
I know yeah, he's not getting to Stovacor. I'll tell you that right now. So,
awesome.
but no. Other than that, not too much with me. What about you? You still don't have any, right?
Well, I've got the OPs that are down on the Gulf Coast, but they're still catching up now both in D&D and in Star Trek at this point. But like the prizes that I already bought before Worlds, so I could compete in Worlds.
Right.
So once they start catching up with that, maybe I'll start heading back over there again. Wednesday night tomorrow is, of course, board game night for me. I'm not sure if I'm actually going tonight, though, because one of the local conventions does a kind of live-action role-playing thing, and they're doing like a dress rehearsal tomorrow night, so I might go check that out to see if I want to join them at the convention.
Well, that's kind of... When you say local conventions, there's more than one convention local to you?
Oh, there's lots of conventions. Like the one they're doing, the one that these guys generally do is Anime Festival Orlando because, well, I'm a nerd, so I also do all things video games, anime, and all that kind of crazy stuff. But
Right.
they do their own kind of little live action like MMO kind of game where like if you do certain things around the convention, you earn experience, and you can play certain games to like level up a faction. And there's like a little kind of storyline that goes throughout the convention, you know, that updates, you know, once in the morning and once at night, depending on how well people did and stuff like that.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. It's had its ups and downs. They've gone through a couple different people now, and they've gone through a couple different, you know, trying to find a good game that can keep people happy. And last year's game was a little bit off kilter because if you weren't there the previous year, you were at a major disadvantage, and there was no way to really make up for it. But this year, I was talked into trying it out again by one of the event organizers, Eric, who actually helps organize the actual convention, not necessarily the game as much.
Mm-hmm.
But because apparently their new game is going to be based on a board game that I liked a lot back in the day, even though it was on a slow descent into death, and that was called Anachronism. And that was a game released by the History Channel in the age of customizable card games. You got a pack of 5 cards, and these cards were like thick cardboard stock. And it was kind of hilarious. Like it was like a 5 or 10 minute game when you played it that lasted 5 rounds, but it was gladiatorial combat between historical kind of figures. So you could have Alexander the Great fighting the pirate Bonnie, or Jean of Arc fighting an ancient Greek, you know, arena Amazon or someone, things like that. So
Well, I think that the Amazon would win.
Well, you'd also think that Sun Tzu was not that good of a warrior on his own, but he comes with some pretty neat cards, and I've had him go up against Oda Nobunaga more than once.
Oh boy.
So yes, that's a cool game if you can find it. That's like $2 a pack now if anyone still carries it, but that went out of business like 5 years ago.
The totality of my understanding of Oda Nobunaga comes from Sengoku Basara. Have you ever seen that anime? That's a
I saw
history
like
to me.
1 or 2 episodes before I couldn't find it again and I forgot about it, but I played the Dynasty Warriors, Orochi Warriors, and Samurai Warriors games.
Right. That show is awesome.
So yes, guys, you heard it here. More than just games, we are also, anime and historical fans.
Changing game and then cross it out. Animes to recommend.
We can do all sorts. We can do whatever we want. This is my show. We do what I want to do.
Well,
or you want to do, or we do what we want. You can't stop us. Cool. All right, I think that's going to do it for today, guys. Thanks for joining us on this little, break from reality. Just check out some games, check out some fun stuff, and yeah, stay cool, take it easy, play some games, and if you've been playing too much of the same game, well, maybe it's time for a little bit of change. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a good night.